From Byron Bay to London's Paddington, we're assembling a healthy lineup of some of today's and yesterday's very best magazines across the globe as we delve into the nitty-gritty of eye-popping imagery and the finest font making.
Somebody who's produced one-woman show here, produced an incredible magazine. I think in the back of their minds, they always think the passion, the love, the labour of love, that in itself is going to make something collectible. You've really put that blood, sweat and tears into it.
All that ahead here on The Stack, Monocle 24's dedicated print industry review and analysis programme. Hello and welcome to The Stack with me, Tom Edwards. James Hyman is a good friend of ours here at Midori House, and I'm delighted to say he's joined us once again. James, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Behind or in front of the Hyman Archive?
I'd say I am in front of it.
You're in the midst of it.
I am. I have to be front line.
And we should remind our listeners, I'm sure they remember, it's extensive. The world's largest collection? It's somewhere in that ballpark, isn't it?
It's the world's largest collection. It got that in 2012, but it's practically doubled through donations. I mean, amazing through the PR and social media that we've had 25,000 magazines over the last couple of months from 130 different donors. They've sort of picked up on it online and through social media, and it's just been amazing. The quality of what's been donated, the people, the stories behind their donations, just amazing stuff.
Well, we're going to touch upon a couple of those stories because I know you've got a couple of, talk about archive, we've got a couple of real classics which we'll come on to. Where should we start though? I mean, I guess the fact that it gets this kind of engagement, the fact that the collection grows, the fact that you can supplement it with brand new titles as well as classics must leave you feeling fairly positive about broadly the sector, especially independent magazines.
Ridiculous.
There's plenty of good stuff happening.
There is so much stuff. There was a report, Tori Turk, who's an amazing archivist at the Hyman Archive, forwarded me the other day. Independent magazines are thriving. Magazines in general are thriving. So if we're just talking specifically about that area, I never, ever have any fear about that. I mean, I always say this, go into some of the top Soho newsagents, you will see so much new content. I mean, a newsagent near me that doesn't really have that many stuff. I walk in there yesterday and I pick up this, the Journal of the London Society. Never seen that before, twice annual magazine. But the old stuff as well. What I found interesting with these people who have been donating is the stories behind their magazines and the emotional attachment they have to them. They can't shut them away. I mean, it was best summed up in a letter here. Someone from Twickenham anonymously wrote me a letter on the 7th of March. I think it was female. The tone of it sensed it was a female. And it just said here, I found the enclosed in my parents' loft. She basically sent in these incredible women's magazines from the 30s. Couldn't bear to throw them away. If you have to consign them to a paper bank, then so be it. I won't have to go through the trauma. Yours faithfully, someone eternally grateful to someone like you. And this is it. I think magazines, especially in this digital age, people they love that physical artifact. No one, people like people who are loving vinyl again. It's just, you need it.
Well, we talk about that all the time and how it doesn't matter that even if magazines were originally devised as ephemeral objects, they can become collectible, certainly if they stand the test of time. And new titles set out knowing they're going to be collectible. They're bookish, they're things to be displayed and handled as much as read for the content. Do you ever think that maybe people put the cart before the horse, though, and maybe get too sidetracked in trying to ensure their collectability and their special status? Does it sometimes cause people to maybe take their eye off the ball content-wise?
I don't think so, because I think having met so many, and a good case in point, we can mention her magazine, Fox Pop, is Amy Freeborn. She basically is a good example of somebody who's produced one-woman show here, produced an incredible magazine. I think in the back of their minds, they always think the passion, the love, the labour of love, that in itself is going to make something collectible. You've really put that blood, sweat and tears into it.
James, we're kind of touching in today's show at, I guess, I don't know what you'd call it, newsstand appeal, front cover pop. How do magazines grab you? And I wonder, you're quite literally seeing more than most, well, possibly more than anybody, depending if you're casting your eye over the archive. What makes you take a second look then when you see something new? Now, clearly, if a magazine references another magazine, as is the case here with Gym Class, which we'll talk about in just a second, that's going to grab your attention. But
yeah, it's a good question.
Are there any principles that you think generally people could usefully stick to achieve that?
Depends on your state of mind, because you see, ultimately it's your own taste. I think, you can be grabbed. You're obviously grabbed visually, because text in itself is visual. A striking image, a great font. They're the things that grab you. Lots of colours. But I mean, two examples I was thinking of. The July 15 issue of Vanity Fair had Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, okay, striking cover as an image, but something could be topical, the content. Donald Trump, for example, I bought a Rolling Stone the other day. It had an illustration by Robert Grossman. Not probably his best illustration, but it was the content in itself. I thought, oh, I want to read that whole On the Campaign Trail with Donald Trump, or I want to read this Caitlyn Jenner exclusive. But really simple rules, yeah. Very striking font or an image, simplicity, lots of colours. And for me, I change over time. Often it really will be what is in that magazine. If there could just be a headline of Robert Crumb or somebody in there, then it's like, wow, I'm going to buy that for that very reason.
So, and that, I guess, reassuringly suggests that content remains king, which is something we always come back to.
Content is king.
If you've got great writing, people are going to read it. If you have great photography, people are going to read it / look at it.
Yes.
And that never really, that's not really cyclical, is it?
No.
It's just the way.
Rule of thumb.
I mentioned gym class. Tell us about this, because this is, as I said, it's a bit sort of self-referential.
Yeah.
Remind our listeners, first of all, if they're not familiar with gym class, what's their kind of deal broadly?
Its great tagline is the magazine about magazines, and it does that superbly well. I just love the enthusiasm in this magazine, the way they cover magazines, their layout, the typography, what they feature. They kindly feature us in this current issue using an image from the archive. They've taken the face, May 2002, with Eminem wearing a pink tank top. This issue got pulped. And it's brave of them to put this on the cover. I doubt Eminem would really want to sue them for that. But this, apparently, he didn't like.
He might have mellowed in the
I think he's mellowed in his old age.
But you have a copy.
So I have a physical copy of that. There were 5 different covers, I think 4 or 5 different covers of Eminem in different coloured tank tops, the pink being the rarest pulped one. And we have one, and Gym Class have let that image live on in this great spring-summer 2016 issue. Fantastic magazine, talking about magazines and what's going on in that magazine world. Love it.
Now, we might have become a bit meta here, James, because it's a magazine show on the radio about magazines, and we're talking about a magazine that's about magazines, with a man who collects magazines.
There you go. But this very Doctor Who, loop after loop.
But it proves that we love magazines, if nothing else.
And I'm honoured to be on the stack with a show that literally deals with magazines on radio.
We're going to carry on hearing from James. There's plenty more, actually, in his stack, including, it's probably the heaviest magazine that we've had, I would say.
Could well be. Possibly the most pages.
It might be the fattest as well. So you'll find out what that is and more as we carry on hearing from James Hyman here on The Stack in a moment or two. You're back with The Stack. I'm Tom Edwards. James Hyman still with me, our special guest today from the Hyman Archive. James, we've already been treated to a few of your selections, but let's get historical.
Let's go archive.
Shall we? Now, you talked at the top of the show about the donors and the amazing mags that they send you, but also the amazing stories behind the donors and behind the magazines themselves. A couple of, obvious classics. Maybe tell us the tales.
Okay, so just a couple of name checks, really, and very brief. Alan Morris, he's an executive for his friend Alan Scott. He had this most incredible collection of US comics. One of the last wishes of this guy was to find a home. These comics are seriously valuable. There's like 1,500 of them. So that was a beautiful story. Guy Mike Aldworth recently, 150 Tattlers from the 1900s. That is gold dust. Michael Robinson, apparently someone went and picked them up for me, had to prize these away from him. It was this whole collection of arenas. He really was attached to them, and it was like literally the guy who picked them up for me from the stockroom said, he's not going to let them go. He's not going to let them go. And he did, the final resting home at the Hyman Archive. That did it for him. Former FT journalist Daniel Green, he had a near complete run of Prospect magazine. He wanted to keep issue 1, but again, he said it's emotional, me letting these go. A guy called Eric Musgrave, he was a journalist for over 35 years. He launched for him magazine, that became FHM. He literally came down, unloaded his stuff off his car. And then 2 here, which another contributor to this excellent Stack show, Jeremy Leslie from Mag Culture.
Our good friend, yeah.
Yeah, he went nuts. Basically, he went to the donations pile. He didn't move for probably about an hour, just literally paralysed. This, look at that. If you saw that, I know obviously we can, I'll put these on Twitter and Instagram so you can see them. But there is a 1928 graphic design magazine called Gebrauchs Graphic, German. I saw that, apart from it looking slightly old in terms of dustiness, that is fresh. And when you flick through this, just every page, the design, the look, the images, there's something in here that reminds me of Plastic Man.
Well, it's incredibly clean, and obviously there's some amazing fonts that some jump out very much of the period. But it always strikes me about incredibly well-designed magazines. However far back you go, they seem somehow contemporary. I mean, you look at some of the kind of advertising that's inside as well. It looks
look at that.
thoroughly modern, not just modernist.
So that was that. And Dulux, first issue, I think this only lasted 2 issues, Peter Blake cover. Again, these were given to me actually by a guy called Lance Hodgson. He was an amazing retired graphic designer, and his quote, alas, I didn't get to meet him when he dropped them off. He said, "They've served me well." But, people do not want to let go of this stuff, or it's rather pulp it. They definitely don't want to.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it strikes me actually, James, you're reeling off a couple of those donors, benefactors, call them what you will. Quite a few of them, an actual graphic designer, a journalist of many years standing. These are people for whom the physical magazines and collecting them, it's kind of part of their trade, but it went beyond that. It became part of their life. You mentioned this almost physical connection to
Lloyd
to
Bradley,
the
actually. Lloyd Bradley came down the other day, contributing editor for Q, Mojo, Empire. He gave me like 1,000 magazines, full run of this golfing mag Bogey. And again, he was so happy to see it. But they were his life. But, they were downsizing for whatever reasons. They couldn't take them with them.
Well, I guess people, magazine collectors especially, have to kind of make a choice. Do they go the way of the Hyman Archive and it sort of takes over? Or do you have to look for alternative options? What's going to happen? I know, obviously, the archive is by its nature, it's a constantly changing beast. What's the plan? Because it feels you're almost presiding over something that's beyond the mere magazine now. These are people's legacies. Is that going to change your strategy at all?
I think that's an important vein to it. There are 2 strategies, physical and digital. Physical, keep that going. A lot of people come down for research. We have some amazing people coming down. Bizarre requests. Someone wanted a picture of them with Howard Marks, who just passed away last week. So they wanted a picture of him in Ministry magazine, issue 1 that they couldn't find. Someone, again, there was a GQ magazine from the 90s with an article about a fraudster. Someone needed that article because they wanted to prosecute and get this guy arrested. So physically, people come and do it.
The power
of the magazine. There you go. Physically, there was that. But the plan is, all being well, at the end of this year, we secure a digital license to digitize all that content and really to make it available, very well tagged, so people will be able to search for anything, an image, an article, an interview, a genre, a style, a person. Because if you think about it physically, we couldn't cope with all the demand of hundreds and hundreds of people pouring in.
Well, I just imagine you sort of handwriting index cards for eternity, like one of those chimps writing Shakespeare. So
it's got digitally is the way. And again, that's the best way of preserving. If they're all digitized, there's no worry about.
And it's a print resource, and it's all about print and love of print, but it lives digitally.
Spot on.
An elegant meeting of those 2 often conflicting worlds. Time is short, James, so let's rattle through.
Should we do the last one here?
A couple of other. Well, you got a couple of others. Let's save the giant magazine till the end. Let's talk. Should we talk hotels briefly?
Quick honourable mention. I mean, this grabbed me simply. Just a striking image of a lovely, luxurious bed. Sleeper. It's a global hotel design magazine. Article again on this guy Adrian Zecker, who I kind of admire. But just a luxury magazine all about hotels and the beauty
and it's quite kind of traditional. I hope they won't mind me saying that. It's glossy, it's beautifully shot, lots of space for the images to breathe. It shows you can do something classic, and it still finds a ready audience. Space to breathe also, I'm picking up on you there, on the new Playboy. Well, let's talk briefly about this, because obviously it's changes and sometimes demises and then renaissances have been well documented. Where do you stand on this then? This is the I liked it. So I bought the latest. Obviously there was this whole thing about, we're going to not have any of the nudity in it anymore. There is still nudity, but it's very, very subtle. And I liked it. It does give you room to breathe. Nice article from Bret Easton Ellis about the whole nudity change. And I liked it. It reminded me of a kind of bit of Esquire, bit of GQ, bit of 90s details. And it's good. They've done a good job on the new branding there. What about, just briefly, a bit of old school Playboy? Not to sort of get into that old joke about, I only read it for the articles. But I do. It used to be amazing writing, whether it was like great essays or bits of journalism, long form you'd never read elsewhere. Are they sort of outwardly broadcasting their commitment to that? Yes, I think that is coming back with the likes of Bret Easton Ellis. I think hopefully that will be that. Without any question. Exactly. Yeah. Excellent. Well, come on, let's finish with a bang, if you will, which is the noise this would make. Well, this is there you go. I needed this. That literally made the table shake. I needed a new coffee table, bedside table, even a chopping board. And what better than to buy the new issue of Pop? 650 pages for £6.50. So you're talking, what, 1p a page? But this is awesome. Look at that. It's heavyweight. Literally a coffee table magazine that can be your coffee table. Yeah. And it's beautiful. Now, is that too big? 650 pages? Have you read it cover to cover?
No, I won't. I'll flick modes. I wouldn't, to be honest.
Do you mainly carry it around as a sort of
status
symbol?
Physical exercise. Well, I told you it's my coffee table. It's going to be there today. It's my little...
So it's function. We talk about form and function quite often. That's a wonderful thing to see. Well, what a great selection.
Thank you.
Of magazines, James. What should we look out for? You mentioned the sort of digitalisation process. End of the year,
we really hope end of the year. And again, if anyone wants to sort of donate or come and visit the archive or maybe use the archive, just hymanarchive.com. It is there for really to help people, appreciate magazines, use content from magazines.
And if you've got any more German graphic design gems from the 20s or 30s, feel free to send them along, I guess is what you're saying to people.
Yes.
James Hyman, it's always great to speak with you. James Hyman from the Hyman Archive here on The Stack.